Hello, friends and creative strategists. Welcome to the second episode of the Creative Strategy Podcast. This is the podcast where we dissect the creative processes, idea generation techniques, and secret stories of the world's most talented creative strategists in the e-commerce performance marketing space. I'm your host, Brett Friedman, a smiley guy who lives and breathes creativity, once called a better teammate than Pedro Pascal. That's a little bit about me. Now on to our wonderful guest, Monika Arechavala. Monika is one of the very best designers in the performance creative space. I've personally seen her ad creative transform brands from mom and pop size to popping off every single day sized, literally adding zeros to their monthly P&Ls. But forget the numbers, she is an expert at empathy, branding, and finding inspiration in everything around her. She's hired dozens of creative strategists, designed thousands of ads, and waged war on AI. Data and LinkedIn posts like the one I make on the daily. Listen in to hear her tips on all of the above, including insights from days working on will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas, managing creative strategy for my favorite folks at Common Thread Collective, Earthling Co., and now Ready Set. And if you're patient, you'll get the most important advice you can get for any creative strategist, and maybe any human in the entire world.
Would you, just to kick off, tell me a little bit about yourself, like your career path in creative strategy, some of the brands you've worked on?
Kind of had an indirect route into like the digital marketing creative strategy world. I went to school for graphic design and advertising, and then also studied as my minor like motion graphics, After Effects, 3D and all that, and went on to do some more traditional graphic design work for a while, and then eventually found myself in the digital marketing world when I had found a new job, wanted to kind of continue to grow in my field. And I was just a designer for a while, learning a lot about Facebook and Ads Manager and all the metrics and everything. And over time, I just really started to enjoy kind of like the puzzle part of it. It was design thinking in a different way than I had done it before. And yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it. And it's so different though. I feel like it kind of gives me back my creativity to be my hobby. Not to say that creative strategy is not creative, but there's like a different, like pure creation where you don't have to think about outcomes that I now get to kind of take back for myself, I think,
Right.
which is also nice.
Yeah, so you feel like creative strategy versus design is very different because there's something tied to creative strategy, like the performance piece of it, whereas with design, you can be a little bit more artistic.
I think from like in some ways, but I mean like most design, if you're doing it for a purpose, like whether it's a poster, like you're still trying to showcase and transfer information. But I just find that digital marketing sometimes, unfortunately, doesn't involve something that looks good. Like not every ad that you'll ever make, you can look at and be like, oh, wow, you know what? This is visually a work of art. This is great. And that's the truth of it, which it's like being able to just make art, not have to worry about like, is this conveying the information I want? Like I'm not building a website or doing something that's also really technical. It's like I can do more illustration or just make graphics and things for myself that don't have to do a job other than make me feel good, I think is more so.
Yeah. Do you feel like when you make an ugly ad, but it works, does that hurt you a little bit? Or do you just acknowledge that is the reality of creative strategy?
It's kind of like, you have a job for a client, and whether or not you're doing like any other type of design work, the outcome is always, does this meet the needs of your client? Is this getting the outcome that they are paying for? And, I think over time you just get used to that. So it's kind of the same feeling like, yeah, sure, I'd love it if we could do something really cool and creative and it works. But at the end of the day, that's not like the job. The job is to do something that works and meets a goal or helps achieve a target or something.
So how do you come up with your ideas for ads?
I think my process is while I think it's important to, no matter what industry you're designing for, look, at your competitors or who you think are your competitors, anybody in the same space as you, like that's kind of like a given. You should know kind of what you're working with in terms of the other players in your space. But I also think it's super important, and sometimes even more important, to look at just other industries and products that have nothing to do with what you're trying to do, because I think that difference allows them to do different things creatively, or they might be able to play with messaging in a way that you haven't thought about in your industry when you're so tunnel vision, not just on like your kind of lane.
Yeah.
I really like to explore outside the bounds of that. And I mean, I pull a lot of inspiration from more traditional advertising, and like packaging design is something I really enjoy looking at, just thinking about user experience. And then I think even more so from outside of just like, oh, visuals, look and feel, you know, compared to like the assets you have at hand. I think it's more important to think more about like, who are the people you're actually trying to sell to, and like, where are they at in life? What is they like when they wake up in the morning? What does their routine kind of look like? It's things that maybe don't even matter to your product, but it's like, who is this person? What are they doing? And that kind of gives you a better idea of like what messaging angle would make the most sense for them. Right. Because it's kind of, I don't know, I think you need to think more about people in order to really get them to feel engaged or have some sort of emotional response to your ad.
How do you imagine people, like if you're trying to get into someone else's shoes that is very different from you, how do you go about doing that?
There's lots of different ways, I guess. I look, you know, especially if it's like something I'm not as well versed in, like a beauty product I haven't used, or health and wellness. I don't know. I read a lot of articles about the thing or that you're trying to sell. I look at Reddit and I read conversations about people's pain points, their own life. Like I look across the web and just organic discussions people have about these things. And I also I don't know, I try to imagine myself, like I am this person, what would I do? And I know obviously like what I would do in a scenario, or if I was wealthier, or if I, you know, had trouble sleeping, or whatever it is that you're trying to like solve, or whoever you're trying to target. I try to imagine like what I would need in that moment and try to decide like how then I would try to meet that person. Like obviously my personal experience can't be extrapolated to be the rule for everyone else, but it's a good starting point. It's like people, you know, if they had this issue, what would they be looking for to solve the problem? Like my response to a problem might be totally different than like my wife's, for example, or yours. And it's just thinking about, okay, you have a baseline for all these people, you know, insert X item and see how do you think they would react, or what would their first question be, and kind of go from there, kind of make it up. Because you can't really, it's hard, but it's like you can do it.
Yeah, that's an awesome process. Okay, I'm gonna pull up a brand and we're gonna right now come up with a few ad ideas just off the bat for a few minutes. What
oh no,
brand?
Okay.
Just choose any brand, whatever you want to work with. Hydration multiplier, liquid IV. Well, let's go through the process. Like, who's the person that's using hydration multiplier? Probably like an athlete or something.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess athletes. I think though that they have a little bit more sugar than some other brands. So maybe an athlete who really is, or somebody not conscious about their sugar intake might not take it. I think we actually bought one once, a packet at Costco, but I think each stick has like 11 grams of sugar.
Wow, it's a lot.
Which is, I don't know, a lot.
So if it's high sugar, maybe athletes aren't taking it. Someone, or a less health conscious athlete. I know that a lot of people use this as a hangover cure. Like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Like I feel like people who just need extra hydration. I'm also not the best at drinking water, so sometimes I'll use the liquid IV just to like give myself a boost, because I know that I'm like not drinking enough water like I should. And I know it's obviously not a substitute, but you know, I don't like have a water bottle I carry around, and like, I don't know, I don't drink enough water. I think it tastes gross. So
water? You think water tastes gross?
Water tastes gross. Maybe I've just lived in places where the water had a weird taste, but
yeah, come out to New York. The water is like crystal clear.
It's got to be ice cold or nothing.
Okay, so that's a good angle. Are you dehydrated? Do you not drink enough water? Don't have a water bottle. Use this instead.
I think one angle you could maybe do now, and it's kind of like a depressing one, is especially in like the peak of summer, it's getting so hot in so many places. It's kind of like presenting it as like a way to boost your hydration, to make sure that you're keeping yourself safe from like dehydration or heat exhaustion. Well, heat exhaustion, I guess, can still happen anyways, but I think something around just like staying safe in intense heat, which is not a very fun angle. would be interesting.
Yeah. Do you find that negative angles work well?
I mean, not negative angles. I don't think fear mongering works well, but I think if you were to present from a position of like, hey, it's hot out there, give yourself a boost with this, so you can keep your body like healthy or running as it should, or whatever audience you're trying to capture, I think could be interesting.
All
Oh,
right,
they
cool.
have a zero sugar version now.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Do you think that changes the target audience? Like maybe more athletes would use it because it's a little bit healthier?
Yeah, I think more people might use it just because it is a little bit like less sugar. Um,
Yeah. Do you think that's a strong enough angle to sell on? Like, here's a hydration helper that's sugar free? Or do you think it's more of a supplementary benefit?
well, I guess for liquid IV, I think that they probably would use it more as like, oh, hey, like you asked and we listened, or, you know, something kind of like that, because I know a lot of brands have been coming at them, like specifically saying, hey, unlike this brand, and it's literally like a stick of liquid IV, we have no sugar and we don't have any of this stuff that you have. So I feel like liquid IV would have to be like, you know what? We took a look at our formula and we made it even better. And we got a lot of questions about X and we decided to make the sugar-free option.
Let's talk about the funnel. So, like, how do you approach creative from different parts of the funnel?
I mean, I guess obviously, depending on the brand, it's figuring out kind of, I guess, the entire customer journey could be so different depending on the product that you're trying to get somebody to purchase, or whatever your intended outcome is, whether it's like one-time purchase or subscription. But I kind of think of it in layers of like need to know information. So it taking into account things like, is this product or service something that's kind of creating its own like niche within an industry, so it doesn't quite do anything that anybody's familiar with. So we need to be a little bit more education heavy on what makes it different, what it's actually doing, because there isn't any of that education elsewhere. Right. If it's like a beauty brand or something that's kind of doing what's already being done, you need to do a lot less education, because for example, like, I don't know, something that I kind of think of is like vacations, like whipped sunscreen. Everybody knows what sunscreen is. You don't really need to tell them all the things it's going to do. But what they did need to do was just show, like, outside of the obvious visual play with the can, like the light fluffy spray of it, like whipped cream. Everybody's familiar with whipped cream. We know what's texture like you don't need to spend too much time on describing it. Like, everybody loves whipped cream. Well, not everybody, but like whipped cream is light, it's fluffy, it's airy. You already know everything about the product just by that really close comparison they've made. So it's like, I don't know, just kind of thinking about what do they need to know in the ad, what's on the site, and then kind of going through the process of understanding, like, okay, so we have like a prospecting ad. This is what's getting people in. They're not really purchasing, or it's just not at the rate that we're looking for. So how do we come back at them again with additional information that maybe wasn't as clear on the landing page once they've clicked through, or wasn't as clear on the ad, and is going to be the thing that kind of seals the deal for them to make them choose, like that cherry on top that's like, oh yeah, this convinced me to purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think about the landing pages, like after, you get someone to click through? Do you have different landing pages for different parts of the funnel? Do you try and test messaging at all? What do you think about that?
I do think that testing messaging is important in landing pages too. Just to see really like what resonates with people. So for example, I don't know, what's a good product, like a cooler, for example. When you're on an ad, somebody probably really wants to know if it meets their expectations for how long their drinks will stay cold in it, how long the ice will stay ice. And then anything else that you go on the landing page and get is kind of like bonus content, essentially. It's like, okay, I already know this does what I want. So then you've got like price, which, depending on your product, you can maybe play around with. Can you bundle it? Is a subscription make more sense for whatever it is? And then thinking about the messaging, like after that key info that got them to to click and got them interested? What's the next set of info like above the fold that they're seeing? And is that resonating and kind of continuing the information journey enough to make them want to purchase?
Yeah, so it's like you first get that message that clicks them through and gets them interested, and they start thinking about the brand, and then you need to figure out how to close that purchase out so they're interested, and then there's some additional information. It's not the same exact thing, it's something that adds on to what was in the ad.
Yeah, I think it, and it's like looking at your ads too, like where are they clicking through and what's in the rest of your ad that you think maybe is important, but maybe isn't on the landing page. When they're clicking through, are they purchasing or not? What's missing, and figuring out those gaps. Like you can, changing a headline above a product, like add to cart button, can make all the difference in whether or not somebody's more likely to click that, or how you present your scents or your color selection. Just like all of that verbiage, I think, can really impact whether or not somebody's going to want to purchase this. And it gets even more complex with like health and wellness too. It's what's the key item they need to know? What are those supplementary ones, and how are you actually presenting it, and when? Is it all the way at the bottom of your page? Are people really reading that? Who's your audience? Like making sure it's easy to find the information they need to make the purchase, and everything else is more like, if they want to know, they can find out, and you're probably not going to sell them on that first ad click anyways. They just need to know more. Or is it like they just have these 3 key criteria and they'll be convinced and they'll try it? Like it can vary so much from brand to brand.
What tech do you find is helpful in making landing pages, making ads, any part of the ad tech process?
Well, I haven't done a lot of like making landing pages myself. I've mocked them up in like Adobe and other programs, or marked up existing inspiration from like I think it's called like Landbook and some other sites, where I'm like, oh, this is a great lander, and here if we just swap out XYZ and we put our things here, this is what I think would be a good flow. Obviously, having a design background, I have made ads in like Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects, and I can mock something up pretty quick to get an idea across.
Is there anything like new that's come out lately that you really like using?
For making ads, I have played around with some of the iPad versions of like Adobe programs, or even Procreate, and like adding an it makes it easier to add like illustration or some custom design to a photo for that kind of like kind of mixed media approach to an image, which doesn't work for everything, but that's it. I'm basically just use Adobe, and that's it. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't a subscription model anymore, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. Oh man, they just raised prices too. They're like, here's all these cool new AI features, but also it's $10 more a month.
I miss getting my little box of that version of Photoshop that I could use for years, and I could just have it, and it was great.
All right, you mentioned having like some inspo that you use, like Landbook. What are some other sites that you really like for design inspo?
Oh man, Behance, Pinterest, Dribble. Sometimes I still go onto like the Die Line, I think. Tumblr, to be honest. I don't know. Inspiration is everywhere. So I don't really have like a go-to place, but those are like some of the ones I will probably go to. I haven't been there in a while, but sometimes like, and it has nothing to do with ads, but Swiss Miss used to be a good resource for like just a design blog and just interesting things, which was sometimes it could spark an idea.
Yeah. So you said inspiration is everywhere. Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if they're still in print. So I also am like terrible about buying stuff online. So I don't know why I'm in this field. I like the tactile experience. So I used to buy like Frame magazine from Barnes and Noble all the time, which is an architecture magazine. But I used to buy that all the time because it's such a great architecture is such an interesting way to see shapes and how they can impact a space. And that's kind of what you're doing visually with ads. So like I look at architecture, I look at cinematography. That was actually what I wanted to be before I went into design was a cinematographer. And just going to art museums and seeing more like experiential, like modern art, you know, that takes up an entire room, and it's the whole space that you're in is part of the piece, and you're not just looking at the frame on the wall. Like,
Right.
I think that, and I think a lot of the things that I do like involve understanding how it makes a person feel when they're standing in that space or that room, because it's kind of what you're trying to do with an ad, right? You're trying to imagine how that person feels when you're seeing a visual. So all those things where I'm like, oh, somebody standing here in this place is probably going to feel this and that emotion, and it's because of these lights or these colors or the height of this ceiling with XYZ and the way that the sun comes through it. Like, all of these things I think are just about human experience, and that's kind of what I pull from for my ads. Obviously it seems like so abstract, like, of course, Monica, nobody's going to look at this fucking building and be like, you know what, that's gonna make a great ad. But it's like part of what I pull inspiration from. Like, I pull inspiration from those things because I think they're important.
I think it's the process that's really interesting, of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and being like, you know, how would someone else view this thing? Like, how can I incorporate this into the design?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the like trends and patterns that you've seen in design, in creative, even in creative strategy, like from a employee standpoint? Is there any big insight you've had over the past few years, and anything that you've seen changing?
I think the introduction of AI has changed a lot of things, and I'm not a fan of AI as it has been presented, especially creatively. I just can't get behind the like theft of work without permission and being regurgitated into essentially like fancy Photoshop filters. And I've seen so many like terrible examples of AI being used for creative on like LinkedIn and stuff. And I'm just like, this is whatever hot take on innovation you're making, it's not in this image. And I just like, I think AI and these technologies are obviously going to continue to be around, but if there's a way it could be done ethically and like pull from art in a way that's not exploitive to people who have been generating content for a while, I think I'd feel better about it. Yeah. But I think that has changed things too. It's like, oh, why would I pay someone to do this thing when I could just generate this generic model that's probably based off of some Pinterest image it scraped ages ago? Like, okay, cool. I don't know. That's changed things a lot.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I think things like, I haven't used ChatGPT as much, but I think they're useful for like prompt generation. It's kind of like fast forwarding a little bit of the ideation process, I guess. But I still don't think that they're at a point where, I don't know, maybe I don't know how to get the right prompts, but I don't know. They're interesting, I think.
Yeah. What do you see the future of creative turning into if AI continues on its current path?
If it can, like, I mean, how good is it going to get is the question, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that if anything, I'm hoping it will be kind of like a Photoshop filter, right? It's like, you'll know it when you see it. And I mean, some of the really realistic ones, it's harder and harder to tell, but you can tell still. And I think it's going to be more of like, I don't know. I think it does threaten a lot of artists, especially more traditional artists, where there's a lot of time and labor can go into like incredible images that can get generated, and currently are generated off of stolen work for the most part, unless that's changed. But yeah. I don't know. I think people who don't know how to be creative or don't understand the actual skill behind it, who are just looking for the most efficient way to get the most dollars for their outcomes that they want, will probably continue to use it and pursue it. But I don't know. I'd like to think that human creativity will prevail and like be sought after still, because it is unique, you know. So
it's also like a controversial opinion. I think a lot of people think that, you know, AI is the future and they'd rather not have too much human creativity. Like it's fine if we can just generate everything, and then the fun part is just putting in prompts and seeing what the output is.
I mean, people who are like that gung-ho about creative AI are probably the people who are like, I only believe what I can see in a spreadsheet. Like that isn't creative thinking. Like if you need Dolly or whatever the other ones are to like show you something creative, you probably don't even have that. Like, I don't know.
Cool. I know that I've had the feeling that there's a chance that creative strategy gets shrunk into nothing in a few years, and there's the only thing humans are doing is some kind of commoditized thing like media buying that is for some reason not automatable. But I mean, even that, it's hard to see a future in which video, photo, like media buying, all those things can't just be automated where you click one button and go, I have $1,000, optimize, and just get the most sales possible.
But I mean, when you think about that, like, oh, everybody can just one click do this. There are already and have been services to kind of give you that, right? Like there's I don't know, like photo studios that you can send their product to, and they give you these really beautiful bespoke things that you don't really have to worry about at a reasonable price. Maybe still not like it's not like, oh, I just put in a prompt and I got this, but and then you think about like there's the Ogilvies and the Pentagrams and what Wyden and Kennedy and all these other like big design advertising houses. Like how you can't replace that. Like I just genuinely don't think that you can replace a lot of the really interesting creative ideas and concepts that come out of that. Maybe they'll use these tools as like brainstorming, but once it's something, it becomes a commodity, then everything's the same. And is every brand going to want to look the same as every other brand? I don't think so.
Yeah, but in the case that looking like every other brand has converged in such a way that it generates the most profit for a company, do you think they use it? Like, is that okay? Like, you don't actually need brand differentiation more, but the market just shifts towards whatever is the most superior product. And so advertising is easy because it's like, there's only one water bottle, it's Stanley. That's the best thing on the market. Like, there's only one tea, it's green tea. That's the best on the market. Yokuro or something.
That hasn't that kind of already happened? Like every e-commerce DTC brand for a while kind of looked the same. Like it was the same brand, but just kind of reshuffled. And it was more about selling people a look and feel rather than like whether or not the product was actually the best. Like it was probably, for the most part, a lot of things are just like average. They do what they say they do, but are they the best? I don't know. I mean, I feel like when it comes to beauty, that's more of a scientific question. And it's more about how something reacts to your personal skin and body. But is that product the best out of that? I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
It's probably the packaging you like the most, and it also happens to work.
Yeah.
So.
It's like the thing that resonates with you the most.
What?
The thing that resonates with you the most, like it works the most for you in particular, and because like everyone's different, there's a lot of space for different brands.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things are so like, what is the word, subjective, based on experience and what people need out of an item. Like what one person gets to go camping and they say just do tent camping, which is still perfectly fine. The version of the tent or all the products they buy might be totally different, just as effective in their use as somebody who is going backpacking, right? But then the big question is like with backpacking and stuff is function has to be the same, but it has to weigh different. It has to be, you have to be able to make it smaller and you have to carry it with you. So now there's all these other factors, but if you put them side by side and they're unpacked and everything and they're functioning, they're probably just as good as each other, but they're serving totally different purposes. I don't know. Yeah. That's probably not a good analogy, but like,
yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're right. There are niches and you're building something for a niche, and it's not maybe the greatest product of all time, but it's the greatest product of all time for these specific people who are doing this specific thing that have this specific problem. Yeah. If you were going to launch a brand like next week, e-com, D2C, like completely, how would you do it? Like what creative would you want to run? Is there any kind of design things that you think would make the most sense for it?
Oh man, if I could just do whatever and I was like financially secure so it could bomb, but I could just do it because I want to.
Yeah, lifestyle business for sure.
Like, I mean, this has been done before, but I would do a very anti-ad approach. Like, I don't care if my photos are the best looking, like who gives a shit? I would just do something that's like totally just like, yeah, here's how this looks on somebody in their like averagely untidy room, or like, I don't know. I would probably just be a little bit more blasé with my verbiage. Like, I don't give a shit if you buy this, but here it is. Like, I just don't care.
That's awesome. So actually just being completely authentic, like no facade at all, no, not even too much like aesthetic or like work. It's just kind of like, hey, this is it. This is real. You can have
Yeah,
it.
probably. I mean, but then you think about that and it's kind of like minimalism. It's actually probably really hard to do well. So, but that's kind of like the spirit I would want to be in, like making an ad,
Yeah.
buy it or don't. I don't care. Like that would probably be one of my like subheaders. I don't care. I'm a
And it's
billionaire.
true.
This makes
Yeah.
no difference to me if this succeeds, but that's what I would do. Like,
Yeah.
because I don't know. That's always been entertaining to me. Like,
That idea. Just you
yeah.
would want to use it as like expression essentially, and
Yeah,
that's it.
this is
Just,
probably the second best hat you'll ever have found.
I feel like that would make me want to buy the hat. So I'm like, oh, I don't actually want the first best hat. Like,
Yeah.
I want.
I don't know.
It's funny.
It's an average shirt with a pattern you might like more than a different one. Like, who cares? I don't know. That's just like the way I approach stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just whatever.
Who would you want on your team to build that? Like, who are the people that you look up to in ecom or in creative? It could be literally anyone, inside or outside. Like this, you get to choose who works on this brand.
I don't know, because I don't look up to people. I don't have idols.
That's awesome.
In design. Well, even in design, I don't know. Like, there's people, I don't know. I just don't have like people or individuals I would necessarily want to like. I mean, you'd be great. That'd be nice.
Oh,
but like, but it's that's a more of like a personal choice. Like, I know I can bounce an idea off you and you'd probably be like, well, actually, I don't think that's going to work. And I know you'll tell me that, but I don't know.
So hold on. Like, let me ask you this question. If you could choose literally anyone in the world, like you can go and get like Pedro Pascal to work on your brand. He's like the creative, writing all the copy. Like you would choose me. That's what you're saying. I'm better than Pedro Pascal. I'm honored, Monika.
Well, I mean, I know you personally, and I don't know Pedro Pascal, so I don't know why I would pick him.
This is a hypothetical billionaire Monika. You get to choose. You know everyone. Imagine like
I know everyone personally.
Everyone personally. You have a special power.
I know everyone personally. That's a tough question. Who would I pick? I might pick. Well, actually, I don't know if I would pick anyone. I don't think there's any. I can't do hypotheticals like this, Brett.
There's no one. You're like, I do everything myself. That's cool. I mean, I can respect you.
No, I mean, I would pick people, but it's like, how do you know they would be a good fit? Like, I don't know. How do you know? Like, maybe I would probably pick like a musician or something. Like, I mean, obviously, it would be. I mean, like, there's artists I've followed, like Taku, who they kind of dabble in design and also in like music and beats, and they've been doing this work for a while, where I think that they've just kind of gone across so many different genres and spaces and done these little like side project experiments, and I'm like, I kind of like everywhere you've been, and you could probably bring a lot to the table. But I don't know, how can you? I can't hypothetically pick anyone.
That was great. I mean, Taku's a great choice. I would probably get like Paul McCartney. I would get like Keira Knightley. Maybe
Keira
like Warren
Knightley?
Buffett. Yeah, you don't love Keira Knightley?
I mean, see, I can't hypothetically like people I don't know.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, she could be terrible in person.
I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, if you saw me on the street, you'd probably think like with my straight like face, you were like, wow, she's probably a horrible human being. I don't know.
You think I just think things like that about people in the street?
No, I don't know. But it's like, you catch somebody on a bad day, and first impressions are so lasting. So
that's true. I feel like my first impression of everyone's like, wow, I love that person. They're awesome. Like if I saw you in the street, I'd be like, wow, she's got a great aesthetic. I'm going to go talk to her. Maybe she's having a bad day. Let me get her a coffee.
I don't have thoughts like that. I don't have like, I'm just like, I don't know. Everybody's blank until they talk to me.
If you had any advice to give to someone who's junior, just getting started in creative strategy, or maybe they just launched a brand and they're doing Facebook ads themselves as the founder.
Mhm.
What's some advice you would give them?
Well, this one kind of applies to a founder and somebody just getting started in creative strategy, but I think it would be to remember that you know your product too well as a founder, and you might not be the best person to make the most effective ad because you're so close to it. Like you understand it in such a deep way that honestly nobody probably cares about. And it's just remembering to strip that away too. Like when you're working on a brand, you can get so lost on focusing on everything that brand is and what the product does and the nitty gritty and everything about it, that you just got to remember, like, kind of like copywriting, like what's the shortest amount of words you can use to convey the same information. And it's kind of like that, like what is the key points you need to make, and anything else above that is too much or going to just overwhelm someone. So it's just kind of remembering to like take a step back. You might know too much. It's like a good and a bad thing, you know, double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I would also say, I don't know, this is personal preference, but just get out of spreadsheets. Like the numbers are so important for the success of a brand, obviously, and all of that. But just like if you're trying to think of creative ideas, yes, you know, the data might tell you where people are most engaged, and then you can kind of disseminate the key information from that to making an ad. But I would also just say, like, look elsewhere. Don't like go on random websites and play around, like go on like awards or whatever and look at these really cool experiential websites and just kind of like play, I would say, because like that's kind of the best way to have an idea happen randomly. You're like, what are you actually enjoying when you go shop and buy something? Like, why did you pick that product?
Yeah.
Like just kind of have fun, I guess. Doodle in your notebook, write down like the copy that you know the client would never agree to, but that also conveys the idea you want, and use that as kind of like a bouncing board. Like add a couple swear words in. I do that for fun. It makes work more fun. Like, fuck this shit. Like, this is the best damn coffee you're ever gonna fucking drink. And then that's the idea. Like, I don't know, like get the fun, weird stuff out of the way, but like do it. Don't ignore it because you can't do it. I would say just use it. Put the ideas on the board because they'll help you get where you need to be.
Um, what are some of the like recommendations in terms of books or like movies or anything that helps you with creative or even just in life in general?
I don't really have like specific books. Like for me, like for design, it's like you go, you know, to the Barnes and Noble or whatever, and there's always like the aggregates of like print design and like just inspiration stuff you can look at. But I do pay attention to, it's totally weird, I guess, but video games. I'm very hyper aware of like how every game uses their user interface differently, like how they convey need to know information, because a lot of it all has to be visual. There's reading involved, but sometimes stuff isn't, there's no text to tell you. You have to, it's all visual cues, it's all audio cues. And I think that's interesting because like that's what you're doing in an ad, right? You're just using visuals to get attention or convey something. And I think it kind of ties back to behavior. Like, what do people know about games when they play your game already? And how do we get them to understand how the rules work in this space, which is different? It's kind of like everybody knows what sunscreen is or coffee is, but how do we get them to understand where our product works in this world of things that you already know? I think it's kind of like the same idea.
Is there any message that you would want to get across? If this, I'm totally stealing this from Tim Ferriss, but like if you had a billboard and you could put it anywhere and that, you know, the whole world would see it, what's the message that you would want to put on that billboard?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say something along the lines of like, even when it's going well, life is just a set of continual losses, some good, some bad. And then the sooner you get like make peace with that, the sooner you'll feel okay.
Wow.
That's not a very succinct phrase, but that's kind of like what I would say. Like,
Your ads are going to lose. You're going to lose money on
yeah,
ads.
you're going to fail. You're going to lose a client. You're going to, I don't know, lose something. Something's not going to do well. You won't talk to people anymore. You won't, all these things will be different and you won't have them, but sometimes they make way for better things, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But it really is all just loss, even in the highs.
Taking a turn from that, I have to ask this question because I asked Gian a question that I'm going to ask you right afterwards. But what can you expect to make as a creative strategist? Like, what's the general range, from junior to senior that you see most frequently? Just, average.
Salary?
Yeah, salary wise.
To be honest, I've seen such a range. So I don't really know, because I think that it varies so greatly. But I think I would say, like, if you're trying to find a job and you're negotiating salary, I would think about what the amount of time and effort is required of you in that role. And if you think that the pay measures up to it. Because if it's like something where you're going to be making hundreds of creatives a month, which is kind of insane, depending on, how you're doing it, whatever. And you have a ton of client meetings and you have all the stuff that you're doing. Like, if it's all on you, I would ask for like more. I think it's more to you, but because pay ranges have varied, and there have been some times where, I've gotten an offer and I saw the job and the responsibilities, and they weren't able to meet me at a place that I thought was reasonable for how much time I knew that it actually was going to take. And I'm definitely a hard line, like 5 o'clock comes around, tomorrow's problems, like I try not to work late when I can. So it's like, what am I willing to put up with?
Yeah. So you've done a good bit of hiring as well. Like, when you're hiring people, what kind of things do you look for?
Creative problem solving. I think that creative strategy, you don't have to come from a designer background, but just being able to kind of like do that kind of creative thought work, I think, is really important. Have you done other roles in like adjacent or similar industries that gave you the skill sets that you needed to be able to like look at a brand and say, hey, you know what, this kind of messaging might work or might not. I think a design background is great to have, because even if you're not making the ads as a strategist, which sometimes you won't be, just understanding what makes great design can help you give feedback to your designers, and just adds another layer of like smoothness to the process of generating ads and being able to concisely describe what you want in a brief.
What question would you add to this podcast for future creative strategists?
I would add a question like, what does e-commerce need to stop doing?
Is there a topic that comes to mind to you that answers that question? There's this one thing you've been seeing that you're just like, needs to stop. Like, this isn't real. It doesn't work.
I don't know. Sometimes I think a lot of the ones where they're like, I used this ad and it changed my life. I'm like, great. Can you just give us all of the other things in the background of your brand or product that helped contribute to this? Because I'm telling you, you take one ad and you put it on like a bunch of brands, and because it works so amazing for you, which they never really tell you that information, right? It's just like, oh, this worked. It's like, it's probably not going to work for all of them. Like, I could copy and paste your ad with my product and it's probably not going to work. Like, what are the other factors at play?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sometimes it's just all this brand equity, or there's 20 touch points on Google, and programmatic and all these. I mean,
the best thing that those posts are for me is just like, oh yeah, you know what? That's an ad format I haven't thought about for a while. I just put it in my back pocket. But like, that ad, probably not going to work for me. It's just like it's more inspiration, I guess. But I just hate those posts. It's just like, yeah, this worked. This was so great. Here's my template.
Yeah.
Okay, go to Canva. You can get like a million still templates too. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a little, I don't know. I'm also not like extroverted like that. I'm just not going to be like, oh, this ad was the best thing I ever made. I'm like, no, it was like, it worked super great for this one client and this one brand in this niche, and it was amazing. But like, I would never say like, steal this from me. This is how I went from X to X. No, it's not going to work for you. But that's kind of like going back to that brand you said, if I would make it, it would be my attitude. Like, this shit probably ain't going to work for you, but sure, have it.
It's really such an important message, because there's so many posts that you see where you're like, wow, if I just try this, I'm going to make $1 million.
Yeah, this is going to solve all your problems. And I'm like, no, stop it. tell me to buy a JPEG again, and it's going to be such a great return on my investment. Like, no, that's the same. It's the same. I feel like it's the same line of thought. Like, I don't know, the hype around it, it's just as annoying and just as worthless.
Yeah. So. Ads are NFTs. Buy now, buy now.
Yeah, they're always changing. So
okay, final question. Do you think that humanity will ever achieve immortality?
No. Because we're biodegradable, and that's not going to change. Like, I don't know. That would have to change so much about our biology and everything. Like, I sincerely doubt immortality, at least physically. Whether one day we could ever, I don't even know if you could even really truly transfer, like Cyberpunk touches on this, transfer like consciousness to a digital form. I don't know. I think we can try, but I don't think so.
Cool. Well, thank you for being here, Monika. This was amazing.
Yeah, anytime.
I appreciate it.